This is Courtney Gadd,
This is Matt King,
and you're listening to
the Bulldog Broadcast.
RES Edition.
Hi everyone, this is Bree Gibson from 5th grade here at Rossville, and I'm here with two more potential novel study books for 5th grade next year. The first one is called Millionaires for the Month by Stacy McNulty. Chapter 1, Tuesday, October 26th. Felix Rannells. The 7th grade teachers of Sterling Middle School did not put any thought into the important task of assigning field trip partners. Their poor decision-making had tethered Felix Rannells to Benji Porter for the entire day. When Felix received his assignment at 6 a.m., he considered faking an illness, something tough to prove, like a toothache, but his mom had already driven off, and the field trip was to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, a place he'd always wanted to go. So instead, Felix climbed the bus steps and took the inside seat next to Benji. Felix tried to pass the 2 hours by reading, while Benji tried to entertain everyone by offering to do stupid tricks for money. For $1, I'll eat gum from the bottom of the seat. For $0.25, you can draw on my back with a Sharpie. For $10, I'll moon that tractor trailer. Benji wasn't making much. He'd earned $1 off of Aiden Roseman and a lot of oohs from everyone else. Ideally, Felix should have been paired with someone who respected rules, like a teacher, or better yet, no partner at all. He liked to be alone, or maybe he was just used to it. Was there really any difference? Benji and Felix knew each other, of course. They were in Miss Chenoweth's homeroom, and they both played basketball, Felix a point guard and Benji a center. Benji's nickname on the court was Barney, not that Felix would ever call him that, because he was the biggest guy out there. And he was always smiling. Benji had wavy brown hair, braces, and zits, and would probably grow a mustache before they were out of middle school. And like the purple dinosaur, Benji was kind of awkward. "Hey, buddy," Benji turned to Felix. "I'll give you $1 if you call Miss Chenoweth Mommy for the rest of the day." Felix shook his head, regretting again not pretending to be sick when he'd had the chance. Now, it was too late. The bus pulled up in front of the museum, and the students were reminded to stay with their partners at all times. This resulted in Felix spending the morning as an unwilling participant in a 3-hour game of hide-and-seek, where he was always the seeker. Benji accidentally joined another school's group. He went into the bathroom without permission. He even set off an alarm when he tried to duck behind a woolly mammoth. And approximately every 30 seconds, Miss Chenoweth warned Benji, and by association, Felix, to behave. By lunch, Felix needed air and a break. Miss Chenoweth seemed to read his mind, allowing them to all eat across the street in Central Park, the Central Park, as seen in movies. A chaperone handed out the bagged lunches everyone had pre-packaged. Felix contained a peanut butter sandwich and saltine crackers. His mom wouldn't be going to the grocery store again until the end of the month, so they were out of chips and granola bars. He unwrapped the sandwich and ate the larger half in a matter of seconds. But Benji didn't have a bagged lunch in the cooler. "I forgot it on the counter." Felix offered him his crackers. "Nah, I'm buying a pretzel." Benji whipped out $1 from his jeans and headed towards a food cart. "You're not supposed to," Felix thought. The permission slip had clearly stated that students were forbidden to make any purchases. Felix glanced back at Miss Chenoweth, who was chatting with the math teacher and not watching Benji's lunch rebellion. Felix sighed and once again followed his partner. "How much for the pretzel?" Benji asked. $2, the pretzel man pointed to the sign. "I'll give you one. That's all I got." "Well, then you ain't got a pretzel." The man turned his back like he had another customer, which he didn't. "I guess I'll starve." Felix popped the last bite of sandwich into his mouth and was going to toss the plastic wrap when something caught his eye just a foot from the trash can. A red wallet with interlocking gold C's. 2 other kids walked by it. For a second, he thought about leaving it and letting it be someone else's responsibility. But he picked it up. The leather was soft and smooth and somehow felt important. He glanced around the park. No one appeared to be searching for it. "What's that?" Benji came up behind him. "Someone's wallet." Felix handed it to Benji. If he'd thought about it for even 2 seconds, he'd have realized this was a mistake. Benji immediately unzipped it and pulled out a $20 bill. Score! Now we have lunch money. Felix flinched. I'm witnessing a robbery. Okay, the next book is called The Lion of Mars, written by Jennifer L. Holm. Via secure communication. Date 3/5/2091. From CDR Dexter to U.S. Terrestrial Command. Message Situation Report. The surface digicam at the northeast quadrant of the settlement has been destroyed. The pole supporting it was knocked over as well. It is my conclusion that it was done deliberately by a hostile actor. Please advise. Say Dexter, Commander, Expeditionary and Settlement Team, United States Territory, to Mars. Chapter 1, Nest. The trip to Mars was the hardest thing they had ever experienced. That's what the grown-ups said. The small, cramped ship, the constant fear of something going wrong, the knowledge that they could never return to Earth. But honestly, it sounded like a cakewalk compared to sharing a bedroom with Albie, because he snored. I hadn't had a decent night's sleep since Albie started bunking with me. I tried just about everything to block out the noise. Earplugs, sleeping under the blanket, even a thick hat with ear flaps, but none of them worked. It was surprising because Albie was perfect. He was easygoing and did his chores without complaining. Out of all of us kids, he was the least likely to throw a fuss. The grown-ups trusted him, even Cy. But it turned out there was one thing Albie wasn't good at: sleeping quietly. And I didn't know which was worse, Albie snoring or Trey wanting to change rooms. For as long as I could remember, Trey had slept in the bed across from mine. My drawings of cats and his drawings of aliens had papered our walls. Our plastic models crowded the shelves together. Then, 2 months ago, Trey suddenly asked to switch bedrooms. Next thing I knew, Trey was sleeping across the hall in the older kids' room with Vera and Flossie while Albie was snoring in mine. And me? I wasn't sleeping at all. Neither was Leo from the looks of it. The old cat was sitting up in bed, flicking his tail in annoyance. The room switching thing happened once before, back when Trey and I were little. The grown-ups had moved us boys into one room and the girls into another. Albie was older than me and Trey, so he was allowed to stay up later. The problem was that Albie would make a lot of noise when he came to bed and when he'd wake us up. The experiment was abandoned after a week. Now, all these years later, Albie was keeping me awake again. Across the room from me, Albie let out a loud, waffling snort. I groaned and pulled the pillow over my head. "Albie," I said. He didn't move. "Albie," I shouted. He sat up abruptly, looking around the dimly lit room in confusion. Albie was tall with broad shoulders. Darby said he would have made a good football player. Football was an earth game where you threw around a ball and knocked into people. I didn't really understand it. "What's wrong, Belle?" Albie asked, his hair sticking out crazily everywhere. It was always funny to see him without his Dodgers ball cap. He only took it off at bedtime. "You're snoring," I said. "Oh," he said. "I thought there was an emergency." "It is an emergency. I can't sleep." "I'm so sorry, Belle," he mumbled and laid back down. "I promise not to snore anymore." It was hard to be angry at Albie. He was kind and gentle, a big teddy bear when it came right down to it, a big snoring teddy bear. "Aw, dust it," I muttered. Albie could have the room to himself. I grabbed my blanket and left, Leo padding after me. Not that I blamed him. Even a cat couldn't take Albie snoring. Leo and I walked down the twisting corridor, our way lit by the cool blue light of nighttime. The light changed to mirror the time of day. In the morning, the blue would transform to a warm, bright yellow. This was supposed to help us have a sense of time because the settlement was mostly underground. It had been built in a giant lava tube, a massive cave-like space left behind by flowing lava millions of years ago. It was the perfect pre-built habitat, keeping us safe from the surface dangers of Mars: radiation, extreme freezing temperatures, and dust. The interior walls were constructed from a Space Tech gray rubber that curved gently, flowing from one room to the next like a smile. The rooms were round, almost bubble-like, for improved structural integrity. Cy told me he'd thrown out the old rules when he designed the settlement. Apparently, on Earth, people lived in boxy structures with hard corners. Earth sounded sharp to me. This corridor was a history of my childhood. There was the spot where I banged into the wall with my scooter, the scratches on the ceiling from where I'd tried to make my toy spaceship fly. It didn't work. And of course, the ruler on the wall where memes recorded our growth with a thick black pen. She joked that as some of the first human children to grow up on Mars, we were a living experiment. Farther down the way was a board with digipics of us when we arrived on Mars. We were much older now than the babies on the walls. Albie was 17, the oldest in Earth years. Then came Flossie, 16, Vera, 15, Trey, 14, and me, 11. I might have been the youngest, but at least I still knew how to have fun, unlike the older kids who'd become moody grumps when they turned 13. Of course, in Mars years, we were much younger. It takes Mars 687 days to go around the sun, so a Mars year is 687 days, which meant I was only 5 and Trey was only 7. Ahead of me, Leo stopped to sniff at something. His tail flicked in the air. When I was little, there had been a lot of cats. Bella, Mochi, Harley, Sesame, Little Cat. As the years went by, the cats died, and Leo was the only one left. But I still remember them all. Then, Leo and I were leaving the children's wing, passing the shared areas, the recreation room and the mess hall and the kitchen, that bookended the 2 sleeping wings. The recreation room was illuminated by the flickering light of a digi-reel that someone had left playing. Like the rest of the settlement, the room was painted a pale blue. It was supposed to be a soothing color that mimicked the Earth's sky. There was an L-shaped couch with a loop rug woven from old clothing. Darby had created the rocking chair from plastic barrels. Everything was recycled on Mars. Even the plant that decorated the room was made from algae paper, although it was getting old and the leaves had become brittle and started to crumble. Aside from the couch and the rocking chair, there was the small plastic table we had played at when we were little. These days, it held Flossie's sewing machine and fabric instead of our clay and crayons. Then there was the plastic display case next to the wall, which housed the rocks we children had collected over the years. After that was the mess hall. It smelled like tonight's supper, an algae casserole. That was one of Salty Bill's standard meals. No one was around, so I made a quick stop in the kitchen and grabbed a few ginger cookies. Salty Bill didn't like anyone taking food when he wasn't there, but I figured he wouldn't miss them. Then I was in the grown-ups wing. First was Meme's room. I could find my way to it with my eyes closed. When we woke up sick at night, she was the one I went to. Past it was Salty Bill's room. Across from it was Phoenix's room. As I passed Elena and Darby's room, I could hear soft snoring. Elena had always complained about her husband's snoring, but I never understood what she was talking about. I sure do now. Everyone's rooms were dark except for Si's. There was a light under his door, and I wondered what kept him from sleep. I left the living quarters behind and followed the corridor that led to the work areas. This part of the settlement was usually buzzing with activity during the day, but in the middle of the night, the only sound was the air scrubbers humming softly in the background like a lullaby. I passed the exercise room, Si's workshop, the sick bay, various workrooms, the generator room, and, my favorite, the algae farm. Just past the algae farm was a circular staircase. I climbed up and up and up the bouncing stairs. I was a little out of breath when I finally reached the Communications and Observations Room, also known as COR. It was above ground where we sent and received messages from Earth. The grown-ups jokingly called it the phone booth. The COR was the crew's original habitat when they first arrived on Mars. Installed by robots, it was a simple dome-like structure. There was a wide window with sweeping view of the dusty red Martian island. No one spent much time here except for Si. As commander, he sent situation reports to Earth Command. Also, he could monitor the weather better up here. It was the perfect spot to watch whirling dust devils. I watched the echoes of the room's previous life. Taped on the walls were colorful maps of Earth places: Pennsylvania, Alabama, Alaska, Michigan. It had been tradition for the crew to bring a map from their home state. Then there were the plastic lockers for the crew members' belongings. They had decorated them with stickers and pictures. The front of Si's locker had a list of all the places he'd visited. Bucket list: Everest, Antarctica, Moon, Mars. Best of all, it was quiet up here. I settled on the couch under a blanket and munched on the ginger cookies. Outside the wide window, Phobos, one of our 2 moons, was a glowing lump in the darkness. Above it was Earth, a bright, shining star. I wondered if the people on Earth thought about us as much as we did about them. Even though I'd seen lots of digipics, I still had a hard time imagining Earth. The pool of endless water called the ocean, the places with trees called forests, and of course the animals. Venus had told me about the birds that flew through the sky and made their homes called nests in trees high above the ground. As I closed my eyes with Leo curled at my feet, I felt like a bird in a quiet, safe nest, my home, one that I never, ever wanted to leave. Okay, everyone, I hope you enjoyed those 2 books, Millionaires for the Month and Lion of Mars. Their first chapters were super interesting, and there are 2 more books in the running for our 5th grade novel study books for next school year. Bulldogs out!